Tomorrow we've a chance to relive the trials and tribulations of Professor Henry Higgins as he attempts to teach a flower girl to speak like a duchess. The Oscar-winning Lerner and Loewe musical with Rex Harrison and Audrey Hepburn. My Fair Lady, on 2 at 1:50 tomorrow afternoon.
Opera on BBC2. The comedy and romance of Mozart's Magic Flute. Ingmar Bergman directs The Magic Flute, New Year's Eve at 6:05 on BBC2.
In 25 minutes on BBC One, there's a fantasy adventure combining romance and magical special effects on the planet Krull. Our film now on 2 is a Fritz Lang western involving a sultry saloon singer, played by Marlene Dietrich, and a bandit hideout, Rancho Notorious.
What can you play for me that's upbeat?
How about a rumba, Mr. Katz?
No, thanks. I don't dance with strangers.
Jack Solo and his jazz quintet haven't quite hit the big time yet.
For our closing number, we're going to be doing something that's kind of a signature tune for the band. Something I call, Boy, I Booked a Bad One.
The Rocky Road to Success. American Blue Note, Wednesday at 9 on 2.
What's it gonna be, Johnny? Drinking or boxing? Stop drinking.
Screen 2 presents The Grass Arena in 40 minutes. And now here's Jeremy Paxman to review this week's television in Did You See?
Good evening and welcome to Did You See? My guests this week are Lord Deeds. He's living proof that not all journalists drink themselves to an early grave. Sometimes they go on to edit the Daily Telegraph, the land of the undead. His career began on the Morning Post in 1931, went a bit off the rails during his 24 years as a Conservative MP, and latterly flourishes as a columnist. Jill Gascoigne, perhaps best known to television viewers from Cat's Eyes and The Gentle Touch, is probably Britain's most famous screen policewoman. She began her film career as a St Trinian's girl, and a year later had been catapulted to stardom as a water daisy in an Esther Williams aqua show. Despite her long experience of the world, she still professes herself a socialist, which proves hope can still triumph over experience. Angus Deaton's fan club, 5 schoolboys in Welwyn Garden City, claim him as the most promising new talent in television comedy. The judges at the British Comedy Awards agreed and have just voted Have I Got News for You, which he chairs, top new television comedy. They also voted him, at the age of 36, best newcomer. Lord Deeds has his eye on next year. Now, before we talk about anything in detail, a few moments from the week's television. They say people will do anything to appear on it, even in the case of 850 of them, spending most of last Tuesday shuffling along a freezing West London pavement. They'd been promised the chance of meeting Esther Rantzen at the end of it, but first they had to demonstrate they were worthy of her attention by taking part in her search for a star.
Was it cold?
It was, but you see, Esther, no matter how cold it is, determination to succeed. If it was 10 days, I would stay here. This is what I want to do.
Even if we don't win, at least we've made something and we've had a good time, and that's what matters.
Everybody's exchanged addresses and phone numbers, and I've made a lot of friends being down here.
You've not lost.
Give us a little song.
I'm all out of love. I'm so lost without you.
And the moment I can
feel that, you feel that way too,
is when I fall in love with you.
Central Television's Voyager this week followed an overcrowded vessel making its way through Zaire, packed with 4,000 migrant workers. When it put in at one port, the things the locals wanted to sell included a baby chimpanzee.
Just about anything that moves in the forest is brought to the boat, even baby chimpanzees. I asked what had happened to its mother, and someone said the people in the forest had eaten her. The baby's too small to eat, so the hunters hope to sell it as a pet. He's been really traumatized, though, and I don't think he'll survive the boat journey.
Not just animals, but whole peoples are threatened by the rapacious demands of advanced economies. The Japanese obsession with disposable wooden chopsticks is busy demolishing entire forests in the Far East. In Sarawak, as Grenada's World in Action discovered, the indigenous people were making a last-ditch stand against the loggers.
The settlement was built 7 months ago. Its sole purpose? To prevent the loggers moving into surrounding forest. Families from 12 scattered villages take it in turn to come here and join the protest.
Ame nyoho e puun mole awa. Ba me klo ya tuai, ba me klo ya nasa tanak metu. Uban ame tusah, uban ame ketau, uban ame kari, uban ame sutuk, uban ame mesekin murid tong tanak metu.
Across the logging road, the Penan have built a flimsy barrier. One bulldozer could sweep it aside. The Penan hope they'll never have to defend it.
An enterprising new BBC2 series, The Day the World Changed, has invited 6 people to give a personal reflection on dramatic moments in history. Stephen Berkoff chose Herschel Greenspan's assassination of a Nazi diplomat in Paris. It was followed in Germany by Kristallnacht, when the mob was unleashed on the Jews.
Herschel said, I have some information the Germans did have at the time. An office where spies could reveal and sell information. So Herschel was ushered in to the room. Von Rath was sitting in his chair. She was facing the window. He turned in his chair, swiveled around. Yes, what can I do for you, young man? Sit down. Herschel pulled out his gun and said, you filthy German Bosch. This is for 12,000 Jews that you have deported, and shot him 5 times. Bang! 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 Bang!
Television comedy producers have been moaning into their banana daiquiris for years that they haven't seen a new idea since 1962. If ever proof were needed of the state of television comedy, the BBC's revival of Are You Being Served? Grace and Favour provides it.
Too much to get me fingers round. I tell you what, I'll grab your shoulder and ease you out.
Well, please be gentle.
This is Slocum taking rather a long time. I wonder what she's doing.
I think we leave her for a moment. It's hard to believe that at least one of the people on Esther Ranson's pavement couldn't have done a bit better than that. If you wanted to force even a rice mile this week, you were reduced to repeats. Here's Victoria Wood's version of daytime television.
Because I know from our postbag, Marjorie, a lot of our viewers find folding pyjamas quite an arduous task.
That's right, Joan, often leading to lower back pain, depression, dependence on tranquilizing drugs, and sadly, alas, to suicide.
God. But you've also been looking at double glazing, haven't you, Marjorie?
Cheap double glazing, Joan.
With the emphasis on the cheap rather than the glazing.
Absolutely.
So in effect, we don't have to spend £3,000 or £4,000 or £5,000 keeping our homes draft-free.
No. So
how do we go about it?
I'm sorry, could you just move away? Your breath smells.
The new television biography of Churchill began this week on BBC One. Surprisingly, this is the first time anyone's attempted a documentary series about the most famous British Prime Minister this century. It's presented by Martin Gilbert, the author of the massive, if uncritical, official biography. The opening episode dealt with the first 65 years of the great man's life, during which time he escaped from the Boers, served in World War I, became First Sea Lord, Chancellor of the Exchequer and Home Secretary, changed parties twice and ended up in the political wilderness, latterly because of his concern over the rise of Nazi Germany.
One man who shared and promoted Churchill's views was Stephen Laurent, editor of Picture Post. He interviewed Churchill on a memorable visit to Chartwell.
And so we had lunch, and I remember it was steak and kidney pie. And I didn't like steak and kidney pie, but I took a little bit. But Mr. Churchill had a steak and kidney pie in a bowl. And instead of taking the spoon, and as I did, he took the bowl to his mouth, and he took the spoon and shoveled the steak and kidney pie in. And I was just looking, you know, at him, what he was doing. Then he had the cigar there at the table, at the ashtray. So he took the cigar, he puffed a couple of things, put it back, shoveled again. Then he had a little glass, not a little, quite a big glass of brandy. So he drank a little brandy, and then I looked at him, I didn't believe it, there was a piece of chocolate, and while he shoveled the steak and kidney pie, he stopped for a second and put a chocolate in his mouth. And I said, I don't believe it. There's no such a thing.
Picture Post was to carry several articles on Churchill. One of them stated, his greatest moment is still to come.
Now, Lord Deeds, you were covering politics at the time. You knew Churchill. Was this the Churchill you knew?
That was, the meal was. He devoured a lot of energy. He needed a lot of fuel. And that's the story of that meal. He was like that. But he had other virtues as well as eating a meal like that. I thought the film went a bit short on what was really a very important period in his life, for 10 years when he was out of office. And probably was consuming too much of everything and could very well have been lost. Those were the 10 years in which, in a sense, he was kept out of it for really 3 reasons. First of all, he was thought to be inimical to the peace effort. Chamberlain suspected that he'd get in the way of any sort of effort to make peace with Hitler. He got it wrong in India, and later, and the film doesn't mention this, I think, he got it wrong on the abdication. He sort of edged toward the King's party. And for those 3 reasons, he wasn't very much trusted by the Conservative Party of the day.
It was a heck of a lot to get into 1 hour, wasn't it? 65 years of the man's life in 1 hour. It was, I suppose they were bound to leave some things out.
It was a bit like that lunch at Chartwell. I mean, everything had to be put in at once, so to speak. Yes, now I accept that. But those 10 years were, in a sense, the decisive period, because you have to ask yourself this question. Because he was kept out for those 10 years, for those reasons, was that not an advantage when he came to take over in 1940? Was he not seen to have, in a sense, a clean slate? I was a lobby man in the late 30s, and I knew every member of the administration that Churchill was part of. And with my knowledge, there was no one else to lead in the war, no one at all. So we got a man who was not only the man for the job, but he had a clean slate. For 10 years, he had nothing on record against him.
Jill Gascoigne, did you learn anything new about Churchill from this?
Oh, yes, I did. I mean, I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. I was rather taken back about how ruthless and lacking in compassion he was, because I never thought of him like that. I suppose I had a romantic picture of him. But his earlier years, I thought the whole programme was wonderful, because I don't know that much about him. It was fascinating, but my God, he was ruthless, wasn't he, at the beginning? I mean, his attitude towards the working class really quite sort of took my breath away, and the way he treated the miners. I thought he was a brilliant statesman, but I wouldn't have believed a word of it. When was it Lord Boothby that went into him and he said, well, it wasn't really my idea, I wanted to be on the side of the miners. And I thought, oh, clever man, he's that ruthless, is he? I didn't believe any
also,
of that.
I thought it was quite critical, much more critical, I think, than the book biography of Churchill. And there were quite a number of serious errors that he made. Were you surprised by that, Angus?
Yes, I was. I mean, I thought the documentary generally was wonderful, but the effect of it was to make me think that Winston Churchill was rather less than wonderful. and that he seemed to go wrong, as you put it, a number of times. That they were sort of listing all the various disaster areas that his political career seemed to be revolving around. I mean, the Dardanelles, the Irish problem, bringing in the black and tans, his attitude towards women, towards the general strike. I mean, it seemed to be just a list of things that he'd bungled and got wrong, and you sort of got the impression that had it not been for the Second World War, he would have gone down as a rather sort of reactionary twit.
I think that's right. I think that is correct. I think anyone would interpret it that way. And you remember when he was appointed in 1940, he says in his own memoirs, I felt that all my life had been a preparation for this moment.
Angus, did you find any parallels between Churchill and Mrs. Thatcher, who always said that, that he was her hero, her model?
Well, everything we've been saying, I think, yes, with the parallels. Yes, I think you got a number of insights into his character, especially from his secretary, Phyllis, I can't remember her second name, Phyllis Forbes, who came up with a remarkable story. I thought that, you know, that he wasn't actually allowed into his wife's bedchamber without a written invitation.
Oh, but that's quite natural. I mean, he never went to bed before 3 o'clock in the morning. There would have been a divorce. I mean, Winston liked to have a really good dinner and get down to work late at night, and he did this right through the war. Drove his staff absolutely mad, kept them up at 3 and 4 in the morning. What wife wants to have a husband that doesn't come to bed till 4 in the morning? Then he slept in the afternoon, you see. After lunch, he had a nap. Nobody else did, but he did. After lunch, he took his clothes off, went to bed, and slept for 2 hours.
I mean, this extraordinary energy is another tie-up with good Queen Maggie. The ability to go on for hours and hours and keep working, and not, according to the people who were in the documentary, not really be aware of the effect that she was having on the people around her, around him. Sorry, it seems to be another tie-up.
She didn't mention that wonderful thing that he said about women. If you give women, he felt that he believed that if you gave women the vote, what was he said, that we is on our way to destruction. We will all be destroyed. She never mentioned that when she went on about Churchill, did she?
I mean, certainly, I mean, to get away from the Thatcher thing, the way he switched parties from, going from Liberal to Conservative and back, I mean, that was an astonishing thing. That made David Owen look like a party faithful.
I think this just wants clearing up. The reason he seemed beastly to secretaries was his mind was intensively concentrated on what he was doing. If he was dictating, if he was thinking, if he was doing a memorandum or writing a book, his mind was wholly concentrated on it. That was one of his gifts, that he really could bring to bear, a good mind on the subject. Well, of course, he didn't remember that he was changing his clothes and taking his trousers off in front of his secretary. His mind was wholly concentrated on what he was doing, the virtue.
Well, let's go on to Goodbye, Cruel World. It's a 3-part drama on BBC2 dealing with incurable illness. Barbara Grade, wife of a coach driver, suffers from Way's disease, a fictitious wasting sickness similar to motor neurone disease. Her husband finds it increasingly hard to cope with and becomes more and more involved in the charity trying to raise money to find a cure. It sounds a bleak subject for television drama, and it isn't easy viewing. But it has moments of humour and great tenderness as well, and deals with a new and largely unexplored subject. Here, Barbara and her husband go for a rare night out.
Phone never stops ringing. Letters coming in by the fistful. Everywhere you look, there's a microphone. Let's celebrate us going public, I thought. He won't begrudge me that. Wasn't I right?
Why not? I just didn't think you liked going out now.
Carry on as normal, didn't you say that? Well, you certainly are, aren't you? No, one thing's changed. You put the toilet seat down for me now, don't you?
Can't you see? I can't do everything.
No, you can't.
Look, you know I can't afford to give up work.
Well, you're not going to have any choice eventually. I mean, do you hear me? That means Sue no choice but to spend every day with me.
People are watching.
Only to see how much I'm spilling.
You want me to have this disease as well, don't you?
Well, when you start looking after me properly, you'll feel as if you've got it anyway.
How do you know I don't already?
What are you looking at? I used to play footsie, missus, like you're doing. I'm no stranger to a knife and fork.
Well, that's it. I've had enough.
Jill, this was terribly powerful stuff, I thought. Do you find it difficult to take?
Yes, I did in a way, but I can't say I enjoyed it, but I did the equivalent of that, mainly because I thought the performances from Sue Johnson and Alan Armstrong were absolutely